The digital clock on Officer Ryan Keller's dashboard read 11:47 p.m. as a warm summer breeze drifted across the outskirts of Baltimore, Maryland. The highway was unusually quiet, broken only by the occasional hum of passing trucks and the distant glow of city lights reflecting against low clouds. Ryan rested one hand on the steering wheel, while the other tapped impatiently against the center console. 12 years in uniform had changed him. When he had first pinned on the badge, he believed policing was about protecting neighborhoods, earning trust and standing beside people on their worst days. Somewhere along the way, those ideals had faded beneath frustration. Pride and the belief that authority alone demanded respect. His shift had been uneventful, and boredom often made him restless. He scanned every passing vehicle, looking for the smallest reason to initiate a stop. Experience had taught him that many encounters began with something as simple as a broken tail light or an expired registration sticker. Most ended with a warning, a citation, or a quick conversation. Tonight, however, Ryan wasn't looking for a conversation. He wanted control. A black Ford Explorer entered his view several hundred feet ahead. The SUV traveled at a steady speed, signaling properly before changing lanes. There was nothing reckless about the driver's behavior. Even so, Ryan noticed government-issued license plates and narrowed his eyes. "Let's see what you're hiding," he muttered to himself. He activated his emergency lights. Red and blue flashes painted the dark highway as the Explorer immediately slowed, signaled, and pulled safely onto the shoulder. The driver made no sudden movements. The engine remained running, but both hands were clearly visible through the rear window. Ryan stepped from his cruiser, adjusting the weight of his duty belt before walking toward the vehicle. Years of patrol had given him a confident stride that many people found intimidating. He kept one hand near his holster, while his flashlight swept across the driver's side mirror. As he reached the open window, he paused for a brief moment. Behind the wheel sat a black woman who appeared to be in her early 40s. She wore a perfectly tailored navy blue business suit with a crisp white blouse beneath it. Her hair was neatly styled, and despite the humid night, she looked composed and completely unbothered. Her posture was straight, her expression calm, and her hands rested exactly where officers are trained to look first, firmly on the steering wheel. She didn't appear frightened. She didn't appear defensive. She simply waited. Ryan had conducted thousands of traffic stops over the years. Most drivers apologized before he even spoke. Others nervously searched for their wallets or explained why they had been pulled over. This woman did none of those things. "Good evening," Ryan said in a firm voice. "License, registration, and proof of insurance." The woman met his eyes without hesitation. "Good evening, officer." Her voice was steady and respectful. "Before I provide anything, may I ask why I was stopped?" Ryan folded his arms. "You crossed the lane marker." "I don't believe I did," she answered calmly. "But I respect your decision to stop me." There was no anger in her words, no sarcasm, only confidence. For a brief second, Ryan found himself wondering who she was. She carried herself with the quiet discipline of someone accustomed to responsibility. It reminded him of senior law enforcement officials he had encountered during statewide training years earlier. Yet the old Ford Explorer and her ordinary appearance convinced him he was overthinking the situation. "Documents," he repeated slightly louder. Of course, instead of reaching into the glove compartment, the woman slowly opened a leather portfolio resting on the passenger seat. Every movement was careful and deliberate, allowing Ryan to see exactly what she was doing. She removed a thick brown envelope made from heavy parchment paper. Across the front were official federal markings, printed in bold black lettering. A deep crimson wax seal secured the flap. She extended the envelope toward him without a trace of hesitation. "My identification and legal authorization are enclosed," she said. "Please read the instructions on the outside before doing anything else." Ryan accepted the envelope, turning it beneath the beam of his flashlight. Stamped clearly across the front were the words, "Official federal warrant, do not open except by authorized personnel." Beneath that was another warning printed in unmistakable red lettering. "Tampering with this sealed document without proper authorization may constitute a federal offense. Contact your commanding officer immediately." Ryan slowly looked back at the woman. She wasn't challenging him. She wasn't pleading with him. She simply waited with remarkable patience, her expression calm, enough to suggest she already understood exactly what would happen. Next, Ryan held the heavy envelope beneath the beam of his flashlight. Studying every detail, the crimson wax seal was flawless, stamped with an eagle emblem that looked too precise to be homemade. The parchment itself felt thicker than ordinary paper, almost like the official documents he had seen during specialized training years ago even so. His confidence refused to give way to caution. He looked back at the woman behind the wheel. She remained perfectly still, her calm demeanor almost unsettling. She wasn't begging him to stop. She wasn't trying to explain herself. Instead, she carried herself with the quiet confidence of someone who understood both the law and the responsibilities that came with it. "Officer Keller," she said respectfully, reading the name stitched across his uniform. "Before you make another decision tonight, please contact your watch commander." The instructions are printed clearly on the envelope. "Follow them exactly," Ryan gave a sarcastic laugh. "So now you're telling me how to do my job?" "I'm asking you to follow procedure," she answered without raising her voice. "Every law enforcement officer swears to uphold the law." Sometimes that means recognizing when another agency has legal authority. Her words were calm, but they challenged his pride more than if she had shouted. Ryan had always believed confidence came from taking charge. In his mind, hesitation looked like weakness. He had built a reputation inside the precinct for being decisive, even aggressive when necessary. Some younger officers admired him. Others quietly questioned whether he crossed the line too often. He glanced once more at the warning printed across the front. "Do not open except by authorized personnel." His jaw tightened. "You expect me to believe anyone can drive around carrying secret, federal paperwork instead of a driver's license?" The woman answered immediately. "I expect every officer to recognize that different assignments require different procedures. Federal investigations often involve confidential documentation. That's why the instructions tell you exactly who to call." Ryan shook his head. "Nice story." Without another word, he slid his thumb beneath the crimson wax seal. The woman spoke again, her voice remaining steady despite what she saw. "Please don't do that for the first time." There was genuine concern in her eyes, not for herself but for him. "If you break that seal," she continued, "you'll create a situation that cannot be undone." Ryan interpreted her warning as intimidation. His pride took control with one sharp motion. He tore through the wax, the sound echoed across the quiet highway. The seal split cleanly in half. Ryan reached inside and pulled out a thick stack of official documents secured by a federal binder clip. Several pages carried embossed seals, judicial signatures and classification markings. He barely looked at them instead. He flipped through the pages carelessly before letting them bend in his hand. "So this is your big secret?" he scoffed. The woman closed her eyes briefly, almost as though she had hoped until the final second that he would reconsider. When she opened them again, disappointment had replaced concern. "I warned you," Ryan ignored her. He continued flipping through the paperwork without reading more than a few words. Most of the legal terminology meant little to him in that moment, because he wasn't trying to understand it. His mind had already decided she was bluffing. "What exactly are you supposed to be?" he asked some federal agent in disguise. She answered honestly. "My identity is contained within the documents you just damaged." Ryan smirked. "I don't see a badge." "You weren't supposed to open the envelope." She replied, "You were supposed to notify your commanding officer." The silence that followed felt strangely heavy. Traffic continued moving in the distance, but neither of them seemed to notice. Finally, Ryan folded the documents back together. Though not carefully, the corners bent as he shoved them into the torn envelope. "I've heard every excuse in the book." He said people fake military credentials. They fake law degrees, now they're faking federal warrants. They're not fake, they're fake enough. He stepped closer to the driver's door. "Step out of the vehicle." The woman remained seated. "Officer Keller, I have complied with every lawful instruction you've given. Please reconsider your next decision." I said, "Step out." She slowly opened the driver's door and stood on the shoulder of the highway. Even now, she made no sudden movements. Her hands stayed visible and her expression remained composed. Ryan turned her toward the vehicle. "I'm placing you in temporary custody while we sort this out." She did not resist as he secured the handcuffs around her wrists. She looked toward the flashing patrol lights, reflecting across the empty road. Then she quietly said, "The strength of a badge has never come from authority alone. It comes from the discipline to use that authority wisely." Ryan dismissed her words as another attempt to lecture him. He guided her toward the rear seat of his cruiser. Still convinced he had complete control of the situation, never realizing that every passing minute was bringing consequences far greater than either handcuffs or an arrest report. Ryan escorted the woman through the front doors of the precinct with the confidence of someone convinced he had just made an important arrest. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead as a few officers looked up from their desks. Some nodded in approval, assuming Ryan had handled another difficult stop. Others simply watched the woman, puzzled by how calm she appeared despite wearing handcuffs. The desk sergeant, Michael Harris, had served more than 25 years in law enforcement. He believed that experience had taught him one important lesson. The loudest person in the room was rarely the one who knew the most. As Ryan tossed the torn envelope onto the front counter, Harris immediately noticed the quality of the paper and the broken crimson wax seal. "What have you got there?" Harris asked. Ryan shrugged. "Someone trying to impress me with fake federal paperwork." The woman spoke politely. "Sergeant, I respectfully request that you contact your commanding officer before handling those documents." Any further, Ryan rolled his eyes. "See, she still thinks we're buying the act." Harris ignored Ryan's comment. He carefully lifted the envelope and examined the federal markings. His expression slowly changed. The paper carried embedded security fibers that reflected beneath the overhead lights. He had seen similar materials only a handful of times, during joint operations with federal agencies. His heartbeat quickened. He removed the first page with extreme care. The title at the top immediately caught his attention: United States Department of Justice. His eyes moved lower, then they stopped. The warrant wasn't authorizing an investigation into the woman. It authorized a federal corruption operation involving multiple public officials and law enforcement personnel. Harris looked toward Ryan, his face suddenly pale. "Ryan," before he could finish speaking, every computer monitor inside the precinct suddenly went black. Officers looked around in confusion. The radio clipped to one deputy's vest, filled with static before falling completely silent. Another officer picked up the desk phone. There was no dial tone within seconds. Every electronic system inside the building stopped responding. A heavy silence settled across the station. Then came the sound a deep rumble echoed from outside. One young deputy walked toward the front windows and slowly pulled back the blinds. His eyes widened. "Sergeant." Everyone turned outside. More than a dozen black armored vehicles had surrounded the precinct. Their emergency lights illuminated the parking lot in steady patterns of blue and white. Federal marshals dressed in tactical gear, clearly marked with bright gold lettering, established secure positions around every entrance. No one inside spoke. The woman finally looked towards Sergeant Harris. "I told Officer Keller that the envelope contained my legal authorization." A secure emergency phone, mounted inside the captain's office, suddenly rang. Harris answered with a trembling hand. He listened without interrupting. After nearly 30 seconds, he slowly lowered the receiver. "The U.S. Marshal Service has secured the perimeter," he said quietly. "They've ordered us to cooperate fully." Ryan's confidence disappeared. There has to be some mistake. Harris looked directly at him. "No, Ryan." He held up the torn warrant. "The mistake happened on the side of that highway." The woman remained respectful despite everything that had happened. "I never wanted anyone arrested tonight. She said my assignment was to ensure accountability while protecting every honest officer who wears this badge with integrity. The overwhelming majority of police officers serve their communities with honor, courage, and compassion. Those officers deserve public trust, and that trust depends on everyone, regardless of rank, being accountable under the law." Her words filled the room with an uncomfortable silence. Several officers lowered their heads. They understood exactly what she meant. A badge was never meant to place someone above the law. It was meant to remind them of their responsibility to it. Ryan looked at the broken wax seal still lying on the counter. Just 30 minutes earlier, he had believed authority came from commanding others. Now he realized true authority begins with humility, professionalism, and the willingness to follow the same rules expected of everyone else. The handcuffs were quietly removed from the woman's wrists. No anger crossed her face. No celebration, only quiet professionalism. She straightened her jacket, thanked Sergeant Harris for remaining calm under pressure, and walked toward the entrance. As federal officials entered the building, for everyone who witnessed that night, it became a lesson they would never forget. Respect is not earned through fear. Real leadership is measured by integrity, accountability, and the courage to do what is right even when no one is watching. The finest officers protect both the public and the Constitution, while dedicated public servants, regardless of race, gender, or title, strengthen justice by serving with honor. If this story made you think about the true meaning of justice, integrity, and respect, share your thoughts in the comments below. What would you have done if you had been in Officer Keller's position, and what kind of powerful, justice-driven story would you like to see next? Your ideas and opinions help shape every story we bring to this community.